Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us once again for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. Up on our first graphic, we've got winter weather advisories out here on the hazardous weather graphic, and these advisories are out actually for tonight, beginning tonight, if it hasn't started already, but for tonight and continuing through tomorrow, and actually in some cases through most of tomorrow night until possibly even early Wednesday. The zones here expecting pretty uniform forecast here across the area. 4 to 7 inches accumulation tops across the zones there by Wednesday morning. And of course, be kind of a variation there. Obviously, the higher elevations will probably see the heavier amounts. And they'll also have the lower conditions due to anything that happens to blow and drift around. With, especially in the afternoon, lower elevations be more of a kind of a wet condition. So anyway, that's going to be for the next couple of days here as a cold upper level low slowly shifts southward and actually sets up right about in this area tomorrow, and that's going to push cold air over the eastern Bering all the way down into Bristol Bay over the next 48 hours. On the breakup map, the cold air coming down here in the west, that's really put the brakes on the breakup, actually brought it to a halt here for the Yukon River, and eventually probably for the Kuskokwim as well, as that cold air continues to spread south and southeastward. And not much change from yesterday here. I didn't get the updated map today. Buffer was empty when I found it, but anyway, probably because it's really not much of a change from what we have here with it out at Nenana and into the Tanana areas of open to mostly open water back on upstream, both rivers. No change here on the Susitna River. So really everything kind of coming to a halt breakup-wise here for the next, possibly for the remainder of the week. And moving on here, fire danger chart. No significant fire danger. That's good news. And for the satellite imagery, you can see a weak band of clouds here, nudging some light precipitation across Dixon Entrance up into areas of the southern panhandle today, and even less of that up to the north there. This batch of moisture kind of aligning with the coastline there, but amounts even down to the south were really nothing more than 1/10 of an inch, and anywhere up to the north with isolated scattered showers, just a few hundredths or less or nothing at all. So not a bad day across the panhandle, and dry here across southern Alaska with variably cloudy or variably sunny skies here in areas depending on where you were. A few isolated showers, look at they're developing over the northern Aleutian Range here, southern Alaska Range, but nothing too significant, as well as the Wrangell Mountains. Looked like a couple of the reporting stations picked up some measurable precipitation. That was mostly in the form of rain or rain and snow mixed, or one or the other, depending on, again, on the elevation. Up here to the north, that's where the cold upper level low is right in this area here, and it's slowly shifting southward. And this band right here is sort of the boundary between the colder air back to the west and the milder conditions off to the east there. And this is going to kind of be stationary and extend southward a little. And so we're looking for, again, some rather significant snowfall here for the now moving into the latter part of April in these areas over the next 24 to actually 36 hours or so. Otherwise, the Aleutians, under the influence of a rather weak frontal boundary, line something like this here. Rain, eastern Aleutians into the Alaska Peninsula, rain throughout the day with some areas of fog and, of course, lower flying conditions. We had actually IFR ceilings, even though there was no precipitation in the Pribilofs. Their ceilings 800 to 900 feet reported at St. Paul. So IFR conditions all the way up at least to that location. And then south of the front, showery pattern for Adak and Atka. And the winds kick up, gusts 40, 45 miles an hour from Mamchitka out to Shimia. Shimia out of the shower zone, dry, but temperatures in the lower to mid 30s there with dew points down into the lower 20s. So they're definitely colder out in this area and drier. And that continues to chill off as you head up to the north here, where the areas of light scattered snow showers continued, kind of more of a widespread area there along the Brooks Range of light snow, and then the flurries, fog, areas of the Arctic coast. But down south here you can see pretty good clearing from Bristol Bay into Kodiak Island, right up across southern Alaska here in the eastern interior, and these showers popping up this afternoon. And showers mostly remained off the coast south of Yakutat today, and just isolate over the northern panhandle, some partly sunny conditions to, again, this area range slowly shifting up into the southern southeast coast. And for tonight, we'll see low pressure develops right over the central interior here, and a trough extending southward, and the cold air coming southward as well. So look for some snow showers develop even over northeast Bristol Bay there, and begin to approach the Alaska range. So it looks like periods of snow in the Kuskokwim Valley right on up to the Brooks Range, and it kind of becomes a little more lighter and scattered nature, but still kind of a widespread area of cloudiness, low flying conditions, and flurries and fog. Breezy conditions, winds currently 20 to 30 miles an hour across the Yukon Delta up into the Bering Strait. Tuksuk Basin 40 miles an hour today. That pattern generally continuing through tonight there, with the 40-mile-an-hour gust being the exception. But look for temperatures to fall over the Kuskokwim Delta from the 40s you're seeing now, falling into the 20s tonight. And again, that's going to eventually get into Bristol Bay. But the Alaska Peninsula, you're still under the influence of this frontal boundary, so periods of light rain, say from Port Hayden, Nelson Lagoon, probably Nelson Lagoon, all the way back out to Atka, and just grazing the Adak area. And north winds maybe up to 35, possibly 40 miles an hour, but the gradient doesn't look as tight here tonight as it did today. So it'll be breezy, but not all that bad. And then the forecast for Tuesday, you can see high pressure taking over the western Bering Sea and actually extending its influence into the central Bering and the west central Aleutians. Possible clearing tomorrow, dry conditions, winds not too bad, a little breezy there for Atka, but light for Adak out and out to Shimmy with possible sunshine. Could see some sun breaks over the Pribilofs, and otherwise get into the snow showers. Definitely colder temperatures here coming southward, with the, as I mentioned, the freezing level at the surface here coming down past St. Paul by early morning. And so you'll see some sun, but it won't be that warm of a day. And then the periods of snow here in the central interior with this upper trough, also a reflection at the surface. And then rain and mixed condition here along the, as you head south into northeast Bristol Bay. Possible showers Kodiak Island. Increasing clouds Cook Inlet and Susitna Valley, but remaining dry with partly mostly sunny conditions again for the Copper River Basin right up into the eastern interior. Upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country, eastern Arctic coast, flurries, fog, and low flying conditions. A little bit better back to the west here with those gusty northeast winds, possibly reaching 40 miles an hour, Point Hope, Cape Lisburne, and that will possibly clear it out. Rain, heaviest here over the southern southeast coast, and actually rain chances all the way up to Skagway, and showers possibly reaching Yakutat. Outlook for Wednesday, an even stronger system now. We got a 980 millibar low pushing another front, so it looks like in the afternoon maybe some moderate amounts of rainfall pushing into the southern panhandle, with rain all the way up to the north side. Still showers for Yakutat, and then this front swings across, or this trough looks like it'll bring a chance of moisture in across south central Alaska of a scattered shower nature, of the form of which will depend on the time of day, your elevation, and really your actually anywhere your location, but amounts at this point don't look too heavy. Areas of snow up to the north on the North Slope Brooks Range, another batch shifting down, more snow into St. Lawrence Island. Those are surges of cold air coming southward here, so solid snow for the Pribilofs. I mean, it'll be in the form of snow, definitely, with even snow showers down to the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians. Low temperatures for tonight, single numbers on the Arctic coast, warm into the teens, and then south of the mountains jump into the mid to upper 20s, and about that all the way down to the coast here, 20s to lower 30s for the lows, right to the North Gulf Coast, 30s to lower 40s in the Panhandle. Highs for tomorrow, 50s again, the Tanana Valley, chillier out to the west here, falling into the 20s, the Kuskokwim Delta, following morning lows in the teens over the southwest. Now all the way to King Salmon, low 18, 25 to 30 south central Alaska, just above zero on the Arctic coast, followed by highs upper 10 to 15 on the Arctic coast, and near 50 in the Susitna Valley.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On to flying weather. IFR here from just east of Atka in across Unalaska Island to almost False Pass, and some IFR now with that area of moisture and snow. Here down into the northern Kuskokwim Valley, right on up to the Brooks Range and into the western North Slope. VFR here to the east and southeast. Marginal VFR, though, showing up along the east side of Kodiak Island, right up to the southern Kenai Peninsula. And marginal VFR in across the southeast coast. Tomorrow afternoon, that actually expands northward here into Lynn Canal Glacier Bay and on up toward the passes. Stays VFR, southeast Alaska, Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound, up into the upper Tanana Valley. This area IFR expanding and growing and trailing off down to, looks like it's trying to get into Kamishak Bay there, right up along and just west of the, or along the western slopes of the Alaska Range. Marginal VFR back out and off the coast. Bering Sea breaking out into some pretty good VFR out there that extends down to Adak. And for Wednesday morning, IFR now shifting up to the north, Koyukuk Valley, Brooks Range, North Slope, Arctic coast. Marginal VFR now south of that into the Susitna Valley and Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula. VFR to the southwest of Bristol Bay, holding VFR, Copper River Basin, Upper Tanana Valley, and pretty much marginal out here over the Bering Sea, but Adak and Atka, VFR and IFR for the southeast coast. That continues into the afternoon, marginal farther to the north there, Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, but IFR all the way down to Dixon Entrance. Marginal VFR right up into the Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound now, across Cook Inlet, Susitna Valley, into at least the northern Kuskokwim Valley. IFR back out along the Yukon Delta coast up to near Nome to Wales or so, Teller, and pretty much east of St. Lawrence Island. More IFR up there over the North Slope and to the eastern Arctic coast, marginal out west. And the passes, Anatuvik, looks like it'll be occasionally IFR tomorrow throughout the entire day. Same forecast for Adigan. And Lake Clark and Merrill, deteriorating conditions, VFR to IFR trend. And those conditions will be developing. The IFR best chance will be on the western slopes or western entrances of both passes. And for rainy, same trend, except probably starting out marginal, becoming IFR. And again, the lowest conditions in IFR most likely on the western entrance. Windy though, VFR slowly trending toward marginal VFR in the latter part of the afternoon, may take until evening, so not so bad there. Isabel, Mentasta, and really the remainder of the passes here, Tanita, Isabel, Mentasta, Tanita, all looking VFR, as well as Portage VFR, and Chilkoot and White starting out VFR early, marginal VFR into and through the afternoon. Freezing levels about 2,000 feet here up across the southeast coast. Otherwise, 2,000 feet's off the chart here, well south of the Aleutians, and the surface here coming southward now right down into Togiak Bay by tomorrow morning and just south of St. Paul Island. And the icing chart here showing areas of light to very isolated moderate rime or possibly mixed icing here. Best thread up over the here to the north in the Brooks Range, and that kind of breaks up and trails off as you head south here. And then icing free to the east. No icing out over the Bering Sea or the Aleutians expected. And then we got that system coming up off the south coast of the Panhandle. That could, that'll probably bring some possibly considerable moderate rime icing right up to the coast of Prince of Wales Island. And for the jet stream, there's that upper low associated with the storm I just spoke of there, right off the southeast coast, so the main jet cutting in to the south. And upper level low, the cold upper low here coming southward here, pulling the cold air with it down across the eastern Bering and the western interior here. 40 to 50 knot northerlies with that, not particularly strong, and then ridging out over the southwest Bering and the Aleutians. And for the 9,000 foot wind flow chart here, that low shows up pretty good now. The cold upper low here, winds around that, not all that strong, 15 to 25 knots or so, but northwest 35 right across Nunivak Island. Northerlies at about 30 in the central Aleutians. Southeast 25 to 30 on the along and off the southeast coast. Pretty light here for the North Gulf Coast into the southeast interior. And at 3,000 feet, 30-35 knot winds developing on the south coast, light and variable over the interior, and pretty much northerlies to northwest along the west coast. Turbulence, moderate chop for the east central Aleutians and along Prince of Wales Island.
Welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service, and joining us today, two more people to talk about the augmented reality sandbox. It's Alana Valaji. She's a University of Alaska Fairbanks mechanical engineering student, helped design and work on the details to make this new type of sandbox there. Thanks for joining us, Alana. Thanks. And Courtney Breest, she's the outreach coordinator for AKwx, which is the experimental program to stimulate competitive research. It's a program funded nationally by the National Science Foundation, right?
Yes.
Okay. Alana, tell us about how you changed and adapted this version of the augmented reality sandbox. It's a really cool tool.
So Gina approached us with 3 goals for this new version of the sandbox. They wanted it to be compact in a light system that could travel around the state. They wanted it to be child-oriented, so we designed the sandbox to have 3 different levels.
Okay.
It's pretty cool. You can have younger children, you can have high school kids. I guess I should say high school teenagers.
Sure.
And then we also designed it to be more marketable, user-friendly, so that this could be seen eventually in classrooms all over the place, all over the state.
Okay. And you had a big hand in this, but this was a team approach, right?
Definitely. It was a really good experience for myself, for George Stevens, who we'll see later.
One of our hand models today. Yeah.
For 2 other members who aren't here today, Cody Klingman and Austin Hunt. And it was just a really good learning experience all around.
Very good. And this is something that is part of your learning experience as well, so you get to check a box in your education.
Yeah,
right?
it's a requirement for seniors of mechanical engineering at University of Alaska Fairbanks.
Very good. Very good. Well, it is a wonderfully inquisitive tool, fun to play with, and I hope to get my hands in the sand here in just a little bit. But it's also part of a bigger program, something that we were talking about a moment ago, AKwx, and that's what Courtney is here to tell us more about. What is AKwx and why do you need a sandbox?
Well, AKwx, as you mentioned, is a national program. We're funded nationally, but we're actually located statewide. We're at UAF, we're at UAA, we're in Southeast at UAS, and she mentioned, you know, taking the sandbox as an educational tool, and that's where I'm an outreach coordinator for the South Central test case.
Okay.
Our focus is on the Kenai watershed, and we are really interested in using these tools like the sandbox to interact with the students down there and get them interested in STEM and also communicate the research findings that we've been having throughout the state.
Okay. And one of those, as George and Eric are kind of changing the contours for us there from UAF to maybe something that resembles a little bit of something more of the Kenai watershed, which is one of your focuses for the study, right? And specifically looking at some of the changes there and how that impacts people and also the salmon.
Yes, it is all of our research is social and environmental.
Okay.
So we have social scientists working hand in hand with our environmental scientists. One of the things we're studying is Upper Russian Lake, and we have a researcher taking sediment cores from that lake. So one of the things we're going to use the sandbox to communicate is how the landscape changed over a long period of time, thousands of years, going from glacier, covered by glacier ice, to being filled with water. And then
that's what they're doing right now.
Exactly. So
live.
So they're moving
cool.
the water around. And then I think they've got some props over there, because we're also going to go a little bit more in depth and explain how the salmon got there.
Okay.
So using
there's
these,
the salmon.
Exactly. Oh, I think there's a few more.
Yeah, we like more salmon in Alaska. More salmon.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really taking the findings from our research grant and just trying to connect with the community and translate it in a really hands-on and exciting way, so people can, you know, interact with us as much as possible.
Well, sure. That makes the learning and the science real and quite literally in your face, rather than just some boring black and white paper that you have to read about. This is something that people can understand better because it's visual and they're touching and feeling and seeing these changes, right?
Yeah, and get them engaged. And then outreach is a huge component, and working with the younger students, and actually even, I mean, working with the UAF graduate and engineering students it's a huge part of our grant, and we really enjoy it.
Oh, it is wonderfully exciting. And so, Alana, you were telling us that this is built to travel.
Right.
And this is built to do more things than version 1. Where can this type of project go in Alaska? And what can it demonstrate?
I mean, we were hoping to eventually get to villages that were harder to reach, that you couldn't necessarily move a whole fixed instrument to, right? You need something that can pack up, fit in your truck bed. I mean, one of the most attractive parts of this project is that this was going to be something that was used past our graduation point. You know, this is going to be something that lives in the state for years.
Right, right. Well, it looks like you're well on your way with that. So what are, give me another example. What else can this show us? We've talked about the Kenai River watershed. What's the coolest thing that you've played in the sand with? What's your idea?
Well, I definitely enjoy the props, but we also like kind of building up a giant mound, and if you put some water behind it, you can make a little runway, I guess, and you know, demonstrate the effects of the hydrology by just putting up a dam and letting it all pour right down. And so that could, I think you mentioned it earlier, you could even demonstrate the effects of a tsunami.
Right.
Or something along those lines.
So it's not just topography, but it's also hydrology and coastal surge mapping and some of the coastal changes that we're seeing here in Alaska, and seeing what the smaller changes in the sandbox might do to kind of a real effect of a slosh or a push of water up on the coast. Tsunami inundation mapping, or even glacial dam release, as some has been demonstrated before. So wow, that's just an impressive thing. That it seems like the possibilities are nearly endless with this, and probably even more ideas that are popping up in your head too.
Yeah, as we speak.
Very cool. All right. Well, if folks want to get more information about AKwx, you guys are online. You're on Facebook, Twitter, and on YouTube. AKwx, right? AKwx, Alaska AKwx, that is. And again, you guys are funded by the National Science Foundation, so more to come from that, and a longer-term study there. Thank you, ladies, for joining us today. Congratulations on your hard work there. This is really fun. And for now, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and I'm going to go play in the sandbox there. We'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. A little bit of an increase here south and to the west of St. Lawrence Island, and it looks like a little bit solider now, even between the north side of St. Lawrence Island on up into the Bering Strait. Still kind of a thin area here west of Kotzebue Sound, and really not much change in Norton Sound. Looks like with the colder temperatures coming in and the northerly winds that are going to continue for the next 4 or 5 days, ice will begin to shift back to the south, probably increase here over the eastern part there. But the warmer temperatures down to the south here, it won't be a big jog to the south. It'll be not that significant. There's not any chance that it'll reach even halfway to St. Matthew Island. Coastal water forecast, southeast 30 knots on the south coast, small craft advisories, 13 to 14 foot seas. Gales on the north coast, east-southeast 35 knots, and 5 knots out of the southeast. Pretty light winds there for Lynn Canal, 10 knots Stevens Passage, small craft advisories though for Clarence Strait. And the outlook for Wednesday, let's go gales there, 35 knots for Clarence Strait now, and 45 knot winds here with that storm coming in toward the south coast. Actually 45 knot southeasterlies all the way up to the north side, extreme north coast east, 35 gusts 40. Lynn Canal still on the light side at 10 knots and 15 knots for Stevens Passage. Prince William Sound, variable to northwest at 10 tomorrow, slight seas, east 25, northeast 25, eastern North Gulf Coast, and down to 15 here back across the Barrens. Light northeasterlies for Kamishak Bay, and northwest at 10 for Cook Inlet. And for Wednesday, southwest 10 knots here for Cook Inlet. Still light winds and seas slide about 2 feet or less, and west 20 for Kamishak Bay, turn northwest across the Barrens, east 10. Actually kind of a variable pattern here. We'll go for east at 10 with 5-foot seas for the western North Gulf Coast. East side though, over to Middleton Island, small craft advisories, east 25, northeast 15, Prince William Sound. Shelikof Strait northwest at 10 tomorrow, northeast 20 here along the east side of Kodiak and Sitkinak to Castle Cape, 15 knots out of the north. North to northeast, 20 knots for the Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay, northwest at 15 with 4-foot seas. And go northwest 20 knots for Bristol Bay on Wednesday, northwest 15 to 20 across the Alaska Peninsula, seas as high as 7 feet with 20 knot winds. right up to Sitkinak, and then east side of Kodiak, north 20, Shelikof Strait, northwest 15. Fox Islands, north to mostly northeast, 25 to 30 knots tomorrow with seas anywhere from 10 to 12 feet. And Central Aleutians north to northeast at 25 to 30 knots with 9 to 10 foot seas, and then west of Adak here all the way out to Shemya north at 20, 8 to 10 foot seas. And then for Wednesday, Kiska to Shemya northeast 15, and then Kiska over toward Adak, very light northwest at 10. Really laid down here with the Central Aleutians is 10 to 15 knot northwest breezes there, and maybe a tad stronger, 15 to 20 for the Fox Islands. Southwest coast, north 25 knots, small craft advisories all along the southwest coast there in Nunivak Island, northeast at 20 for the Pribilofs, northwest 15, St. Matthew Island, and 25 knots out of the northwest for St. Lawrence Island, north 15, 2 foot seas for Norton Sound. And then for Wednesday, even lighter winds for Norton Sound, northeast at 10, 30 knots, small craft advisories there, St. Lawrence Island, a little bit less wind here on the southwest coast, 15 to 20, still out of the northwest. Northwest 15 for the Pribilofs, turn north at 20 for St. Matthew Island. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east-northeast 15 and northeast 15 on the central coast, north 15 on the west side. And from Cape Beaufort down to Cape Thompson, 20 knots. And south of there, we've got brisk wind advisories on down into the Bering Strait, as those winds will be at about 25 knots. Those increase on Wednesday, 30-knot winds, brisk wind advisories from Wales here, all the way up on the west side of the Arctic coast there, and then 20-knot winds from the east-northeast, mostly northeast until you get over toward Demarcation Point, and then it's more easterly. For tonight again, area of snow, cold upper low here, pulling cold air southward, and so we're going to have some snow showers eventually get into Bristol Bay with an area of snow, something like this, up along and west of this boundary to the Alaska Range, all the way up to the Arctic coast. Stays dry in the east, occasionally wet, especially over the central and southern southeast coast. Couple of lows here. We'll see tomorrow another one swings up, and rain periods of south and a little bit more intermittent to the north. Snow chances continue with those winter weather advisories, 4 to 7 inches by Wednesday morning in those areas right up to the Brooks Range. Mixture down here into northeast Bristol Bay in the afternoon. And then something comes across south central Alaska, stronger storm off the southeast coast with those good gales, almost storm force winds coming in late in the afternoon.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal, pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.